Alright, in this session we're going to look at the remove silence tool or strip silence tool. It's a really efficient tool and processor in Logic that's going to clean up tracks and remove parts of the audio that you don't want really nicely and quite quickly. A little quicker than maybe cutting and fading and putting in trim points, that kind of thing, which you might need to use still in conjunction with remove silence, but this is going to do a lot of the work quite efficiently and quite quickly. It can take a little bit of practice to get your head around that kind of thing, but let's take a look at some examples here. So we've got the male vocal here. You can see these transients are nice and strong here, where these are the vocal bits we want. Anything else in here could be noise, could be the click track bouncing back through the headphones, stuff we want to get rid of. All right, so let's access the remove silence tool by holding the control on your keyboard and hitting X. And we'll see this window pop up here. We can see that it's taken the audio track. Here's the male vocal, and the rest along these dotted lines and these weaker bits here. It's just some noise bits we want to cut out. So we've got some options over here. We've got the threshold. Dialing this in is going to tell the processor at what threshold to allow the audio to pass through and at what point to stop, just like you'd find a threshold, and your noise gate works in a very similar way. We've got the minimum time to accept a silence. This kind of works really with the attack and release time. It's kind of like a hold function, and we'll see how that works when we look at the attack and release. The attack and release here, this is just going to allow audio in on the attack time, pre-audio as it's coming up to the transient, how close it's going to be, the attack time, and just as well we've got the release time on the other end of that. You can see the window moving to the right for the release time. So let's see how this works. We've also got the search zero crossing. If we keep this enabled, this means that whenever we bring the threshold in and we play with the attack and release, that it's only gonna chop up our audio at the zero crossing. When our audio goes from positive to negative values, so we avoid pops and clicks and those kinds of things there. So I've started to play with the threshold here a little bit, and we can see that around here there's still on some of these like weaker peaks here, when they're not as strong, the remove silence tool is cutting those out. We don't want that. That looks like one whole transient, one whole bit of dialogue or vocal here we want to keep in. So let's keep playing with this threshold until we let in a good healthy amount there. Too much, we're going to start letting in all sorts of other bits of noise around it. So it might take a couple of goes, but let's just find somewhere that looks pretty good. Okay, so let's keep this around minus 20 dB. Well, it looks like we've got the chunk of these vocals in here. Let's play with the attack time a little bit, bring this out because we might want a breath, just a bit of a breath in that vocal just to keep it a bit more human sounding, a bit more natural sounding. A bit of release time as well. Let's take this out the other end, so as we don't cut off any tail of the vocal, that kind of thing that, it's an important part of the vocal we want to keep in there. We don't cut that off too soon. So maybe something like this looks all right. Okay, there could be a bit of noise in here, but we can use our fade tool after this just to go in and clean that up a little bit nice and quickly. This minimum time to accept a silence, acts as kind of like a hold. So if I play with this, you can see that it's pushing it out more towards the release time, where those transients start to overlap a little bit. So you can use this in conjunction with pre-attack and post-release time to kind of change how those interact there. I tend to not play with that so much, just with vocals and other things like this. Just the attack and release time tend to do enough. So there we go. I set the threshold, how much I want to let through, and I play with the attack and release time just to get just so there's a bit of room at the beginning and end of the trends. Click OK and apply that. Very cool. So there it is. There's a cut up. We've got those vocal transients. Now if we go in a little bit, there might be some breaths and things like that. And we've used our fade tool previously just to ensure there's like a nice sort of attack time with those, in terms of its volume. So what I can is I can select all these now that this looks pretty good. I can take my fade tool, which I've got on the secondary click, hold command, and if I take it from the beginning of the transient, swipe left, it's going to do that to all of my transients, just like this. And I'll do it on the release time as well. There it is. I fade it in and I fade it out. And I can go, and again, if I've got all these highlighted, I can just bring these in a little bit, have like a closer attack and closer release time, bring these nodes across. Just check them all so they're looking all right. Okay, looks all right. So let's take a quick listen to that and see how that sounds. Let's try these ones here. Okay, there's like a swallowing sound, maybe a bit too much breath. So what we can do is, we've got all these selected at once, so I can just bring this in here at the bottom by clicking and dragging, and then I'm going to move these nodes across as well, so it's a shorter attack time. And if I take a look on all these, I'll do that quite nicely. Do check, if you're doing, if you're blanketing audio like this all at once, that if it works for one, it's got to make sure it works for the other. So let's keep that a little tighter there, and let's have a listen. Nice. Okay, reverb tails and things like that are going to take care of, keeping extra bits of vocal release time in the mix a little bit. But we've just got what we want from that. So there's a nice quick method of using the strip silence tool on vocals. Just capturing these bits using the threshold, attack and release times, and the remove silence tool just to shape that a little bit. And, I've gone in with the fade tool afterwards just to make sure that's nice and clean. There we go. Took like 2 minutes.